morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you're joining from to the next session on the LinkedIn Live of Regal Unlimited. Today we have a very, very special guest. In fact, in some sense, she's somebody that we all know very closely, very intimately, multifaceted personality. Uh, Coaching really being her passion. I call her the coach extraordinaire. She's really reached the highest levels of certification across the multiple bodies, ICF, EMCC, you name it, and she's been there. She's very passionate, and we really have seen her in close quarters in terms of how that comes through. And I hope to really draw upon some of that energy today through the conversation that we're having today. So, welcome, Vijay. I'm really delighted. So, it is Vijayalakshmi. That's the name of the special guest that we have, but we fondly call her Vijay. So, welcome, Vijay.
Thank you so much, Anant. Kind of you for that very, very sweet introduction. And I can't wait to have this chat on a topic we've already spoken about. And I think we want to look at different dimensions of it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Um, so obviously we're going to be exploring the area of leadership wellness coaching, and in some sense I think it's got the three words, right? The leadership, needless to say, the wellness being the second, and I think it's in the arena of coaching. But before I dive into that, I do want to try and explore one dimension with you, which is the idea of niche in the area of coaching itself, because one could say that leadership wellness is a niche in that space. uh, I've heard from many very illustrious coaches about the value of niche, which really positions the coach in a very nice fashion, and the specialization that bring to the fore. And yet there is also the dimension of the fact that we are coaching the who, which is something that we have talked about much of the time, not necessarily the what. So I'm very curious to know, how do you balance these two dimensions as you look at the who, which is the person, and you look at the niche? In some sense you might consider that to be part of the what. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, you're asking a difficult question itself as we start off, Anand. So, and I know, through a group of, even coaches who don't know one another, this will be a top question that they'll get and debate on. So this debate will never end, so to say. But that's being said, the way I look at it is, if you really go to first principles of coaching, right, the way professional coaching is defined by any of the world leading global bodies, coaching is niche agnostic, and I don't think there's any two ways about it. Because let's say when you apply for credentials anywhere, you are not being assessed on domain knowledge in any way.
Mm.
So by definition, it's a process of partnership. So I don't see, a need for a niche in that sense. But what I would like to, however, say, right, I'd like to actually switch up this word niche with saying passion area, right? All of us as coaches have our sweet spots. And this is something which is a beautiful discovery in itself. Like, for example, with me, even outside the coaching domain, wellness is something I am very passionate about for as long as I remember, right? Whether it is the health aspect of it, or fitness, or even nutrition, right? So I think
Yeah.
there are many dimensions to it. I think what is beautiful in the journey as a coach, especially in your initial years, as you evolve, as you figure out, work with different clients, etc., is to also be aware of what are those things that little extra light you up, right? I mean, those are the disco lights that give you that little extra something in your feet, right? Spring in your feet. And that to me is a passion area. Now, if
Mm.
we identify those and really try and see, there's something more that I bring in here, right? Some greater sense of joy, some energy, some extra passion, right? I mean, now it could be wellness for some people, it could be simply relationships for some people, right? So I would think that's a far more intuitive way of really trying to identify those sweet spots. I would even say more than functional area, right? Whether it's wellness or relationship or something else. It could even be like saying, what's the ideal kind of customer you'd like to work with, right? I mean, some people I know are very passionate about working with young adults. So would you call yourself a young adult coach? And is that a niche? I don't know, right? We can debate about it. But the fact is, if you know those, it's fantastic.
So it's about the passion, and I like the idea of the disco lights that you spoke about. That will probably remain in my mind. I think that's a good way of characterizing it. You just perhaps it allows you to have a better presence because it's a passion that drives that presence as well.
Yeah,
So that's an interesting thought. I just that curiosity was in me when we
yeah,
spoke
yeah,
about niche and the fact that you have almost a double niche here because many of us talk about leadership coaching, some of us talk about wellness coaching, and here you are, I think, brought in some sense, the combination of both. Uh, so my next question to you is really, what sort of attracted you, got you interested, and even to some extent got you committed to this area of leadership wellness coaching? I think the combination of leadership and wellness.
yeah, yeah. Great question, Anant. And I must, come full disclosure. It's not as though I woke up one fine day and said, this is an interesting area. Let's get into it, right? It organically evolved. But as I said, it's important to know if you're finding a pattern, a business case, or a need for something. And as coaches, and that's also part of our systemic perception, right? We're working in a system, and we're able to perceive these things. So I would just say, interestingly, if you were to ask me whether I started doing more of leadership coaching first or wellness coaching, I don't know really. And in my head also, probably there were parallel tracks, right? Different people came in with different sort of goals. Typically your leadership coaching, and I do a lot of executive coaching, so let's kind of keep it with that. Is an engagement for a senior leadership of an organization or people in identified leadership roles, and they bring in their own set of themes, goals, challenges. So that was one thing. On the other hand, there were people who would come in saying that, a very it may seem very simple to us, but it could be a very simple marker, health marker related goal, or to just say that I want to move more, or I want to play better with my children. Now it could seemingly, these seem simple, but these are actually big things. So on the other hand, I was also working with people like that, and a range of clients, from entrepreneurs to homemakers, to full-time moms, to a lot of people who wanted to invest in their well-being. It's not that they didn't have the knowledge, right? Wellness is never about a lack of knowledge. My favorite definition of wellness is it's an active process through which we become aware of and make certain choices towards a
Hmm.
successful life. And I think that choice making, awareness, and sticking on to that, right? It's a self-directed and very active process. It's not about knowledge at all. In itself could be a very valuable offering that we can bring in as a coach. So these were sort of parallel tracks.
Hmm.
But what happened in my wellness work, in my leadership work with clients is, and this is interesting statistics for those of you who may be interested to know. Typically, in those kind of leadership coaching engagements, if let's say a leader is working across an 8-month period on 3 goals, whether they start with it or no, 9 out of 10 leaders would bring in a goal related to wellness, right? Now, this could be simple thing like health and physical activity. It could be the stress levels they were dealing with. It could be an overall, feeling of spirituality or happiness. It could be purpose. Now, all of these fall under the ambit of wellness.
A bit of wellness.
So I realized that every engagement, there is this thing, right? And to realize that actually leadership is a very lonely trip. It's very lonely at the top. And while people know they have access to all these resources, for whatever reasons, they may either not be investing enough, or maybe investing and not seeing results, or may not even be aware with all of the success and all of the big things that they're doing, pay attention to self-care in themselves. So I realized that this is anyway a theme that was coming. So I said,
Hmm.
why not we actually, even if leaders don't call it out, have these conversations with leadership clients, with organizational sponsors, and we talk about it. So today I'm very happy to say, Anand, from a point of time when my leaders clients would ask me saying, is it ethical for me to bring in a wellness related goal? What does my wanting to weigh 10 kgs lesser and run a marathon have anything to do with the organization? The truth is, it's got a lot to do with the
Lot
organization.
to do.
Healthier employees, healthier leaders 100% lead to better results for the organization. It's a business case right out there. So from there to today, I have clients, sponsors, organizations who actually give that entire free play for us as coaches and clients. I have clients who only sort of say, I want to be a healthier version of me at the end of 10 months because I am slated to take over as head of the business in that time. And I want to be fit
Okay.
for purpose. So it's
Okay.
amazing, right? From
Yeah.
trying to fit it in to it being a full suite kind of goal that you're working on. It's exciting.
That's very interesting. And one of the things you said sort of stuck with me. You said it's about converting the knowledge. The knowledge is already available about
Yeah,
wellness at a broad level to
yeah,
a deeper awareness from a self perspective, and then translating it into goals and actions and acting on that. Right.
correct.
What do you see, especially having been, and you sort of, I think, started alluding to that. What do you see as the impediments or reservations that the coaches typically have, especially at leadership levels, to translate that knowledge to awareness? What is that barrier that, as a coach, you're having to really enable them, partner with them to take them forward on?
Great question, and I find this challenge even coaches have. It's just not the leaders.
And we'll come to
You
that in a minute. I'll ask. I have very interesting point that you brought up, and I had a question on that, but let's get,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I think it's about choice, Anant. Let's put it this way, right? A leader who is traveling 20 days a month, living out of a suitcase, their entire calendar is controlled by everyone else except them. Yeah, it's as simple as that. It's not that you don't know, but every day there is something else that becomes more critical, more crucial, and
Hmm.
you also have that sense of importance, and rightly so, right? So much hinges on you. So you're looking at the here and now, so you're making those trade-offs. It's the little things, you know it is the little things. And you're taking early morning flights, then just look at it that day. What would happen to the basic amount of activity you would get in that day? What happens to your nutrition? So lifestyle is a huge barrier, and it's interesting because uh, you know at that level, at that kind of high pressure, leadership is a very high pressure kind of place to be. And it just gets tougher. So the stress levels are immense. So
Immense, yeah.
you just got to, it's counterintuitive, but you just got to start investing more. And again, the other thing is, saying that what is the kind of culture I'm setting. Now, interestingly, I also believe that leadership coaching, wellness coaching work is very systemic, because when a leader is making those investments, those choices, and those trade offs for a more longer term benefit to themselves and the business, the teams, the employees, and everybody else will start doing that. It kind of gets like an informal tick, right? You got a stamp. So you can do that. It's totally okay to leave office at 6 p.m. and not feel guilty.
Hmm.
Yeah. So but it's interesting, while that is there, I think what sometimes happens, and I can completely empathize with that, is that you're making those trade-offs and you think it's just one day and another day and another day, but it all adds up. At the end of it, you're 6 months down, 8 months down, and you're back again at December making the new year resolution, and you're back at January. So I think that's the big one, right? Making that choice.
Making
It's
the
not
choice.
as if organizations are not willing to give the budgets, or I mean, so I always say this, right? Setting up a gym is the easiest thing one can do in a workspace.
Yeah.
Harder is to actually get people to use that gym.
Is there a higher awareness and acceleration that you're seeing, given some of the unfortunate incidents that we've been hearing in and around? Right, you spoke about the stress levels with leadership, and
Yeah,
it has
yeah.
resulted in some of them passing away, and that's probably the most unfortunate step as well. Is that in some sense brought in a sense of urgency with some of the leaders to focus on this area, and
Yeah.
making that inroads even more pronounced?
Yeah, one is that. And I think, and here's where I want to call out and a big thumbs up to younger generations. When I hear people in their 20s actually saying, I would pick work life balance as the first one, yeah, the money and everything else comes next. It is something that we're talking about. I think 30, 40 years, or let's say people in earlier generations, you would never see that as the top pick.
Hmm.
Many of these things also, and today in organizations, there is a mix of various generations. So in a way, it's also reverse mentoring that's happening, right? You see people making, youngsters making those choices, placing experiences above everything else, right? Talking about spirituality at an age which probably people at my age level, wouldn't have spoken about in our 20s. Today, we are hearing those kind of conversations. So I would actually say it's great that there
Yeah,
is a lot of reverse mentoring happening. And interestingly, many of these are also Gen Next for those leaders, right? Their sons and
yeah,
daughters entering into the workplace, and or let's say making their choices. So in a way, and that's where the systemic thing, right? The family, it's very difficult to get onto a wellness journey unless your immediate circle of influence, immediate circle of people around you, right, are also on similar journeys, or at least accept that. So I think the first thing is getting enrollment. So
yeah.
while I completely agree with you that some of the, well, I think unfortunate, happenings around do put a red flag. Anant, you probably would relate to it. Great change, and I think sustainable change or sustainable commitments happen not with a stick but with a carrot. So we need more carrots. Unfortunate incidents are the sticks. If you don't do this, what would happen? But what
Stick
if
sort
you
of
can actually
forces.
say this is, yeah, this is fantastic, right? I was
Yeah,
just thinking the other day when, I was struggling, I could climb 5 flights of stairs very easily. Today, at about 3, I find it a little difficult. And I was like, what is the point of everything that we're doing if you can't sort of take care and manage your own mobility? And this is today. What would happen 20 years down the line? So, I think it's not fear, but I think in a way saying that just the joy, right? The joy that you're missing out, the joy of lightness, the joy of being a free spirited person, the joy of being able to do all your chores yourself. This is
yeah.
amazing.
So you spoke about yourself. There's a sense of vulnerability that you brought in, and that's a great segue because my next question was, and as you speak about leadership wellness, every individual, every person is a leader in their realm of operations, right? As they are taking higher
Yeah.
responsibility for the outcomes, and so are the coaches. So how do you see this area of leadership wellness coaching applicable to the coaches and the community in which they serve? Because that's where we
Yeah.
all are, and it will be an
Yeah.
interesting perspective to hear from you.
Yeah, yeah. So no judgments here, Anant. But again, I'm taking the liberty of building on experiences of the coaching communities I'm part of, the coaches I mentor. Um, as much as we think that as coaches, since we hold so much space for everybody else and their journeys, we take care of ours. It's like, sometimes doctors who take care of everybody have their own health, which is compromised, right? Long
Hmm.
hours. Um, going way beyond the call of duty. And in some ways, we also do that as coaches. I don't know whether it struck you, but sometimes the amount of emotion we are absorbing into our system without realizing the stress that we're taking on. It's very difficult to be clinical, right? You're not a machine when you sit in front of somebody, they're pouring their heart out. To say that I've just walked in completely unaffected. Yeah. So we're taking in a lot of that. So one part is this whole emotional, and I think stress itself that's building and we don't realize it. And coaching can be a very stressful profession, right? Like any other service profession, we got to just be watchful. So I would invite every coach on this call listening to actually ask yourself how much of passive dormant stress is there in you. That's one. Second thing is, because let's say on an average 2-3 calls a day somebody is doing, right? You're sitting on a chair for like 90 minutes into 6, 90 minutes into 3. That's a lot of time you're sitting on the chair. How much of movement do you incorporate? And doing 1 hour of gym is not going to counter it, right? It is about just being mindful, saying that my profession comes in with some of these hazards, which is very important. And I don't have much of a choice around it because I love my job. I love my profession. But what are the silent trade-offs that I'm doing? And just be aware and see what you can do to sustainably balance and set it off. So that would be
What
my.
and what have been some of the practices that you've followed, and what are some of the signals that sort of gives you an indication that it's time for you to
Yeah,
reflect,
yeah.
introspect, and act on some of those signals?
Yeah. And when I spoke about sitting, that's me. I still have not got into a comfort zone of standing, walking around in front of a camera, because it's very distracting for the client, right? You want to be absent as a coach. You want to give them their space. But I'm actually toying with the idea of actually taking permission, asking my clients, can I walk? Do you mind? Uh,
Hmm.
I don't know how that's going to go, right? So simple things like that. The not walking is me. There have been days when I've realized, especially during the pandemic, and in my case, it's not just clients, but communities that I lead, and volunteer leadership and things like that, just gets you in front of the system for so long, 8 hours, 9 hours. It's so unhealthy. Sitting is the new smoking. We don't realize it, but that's the truth. Or, for example, things like stress I spoke about, right? There are weeks when, on Friday when I close my calendar, I feel a sense of heaviness inside me. And it's not that I want to do away with it. I need to stay with it. That makes me human and the coach that I am. But I got to be sure that I deal with it in a way that I can still go back to the next client with lightness. So frequent resets is something I've learned to do.
Resets and recognition.
Yeah, just recognize, reset. You don't have to be the best version of it. You don't have to be stress-free. I'll never say, aim for a stress-free career profession. Every profession has got its stresses. But when we don't recognize, when we don't realize it's adding up, when we realize it's taking away some precious things away from us, that's the red flag.
So recognize and reset. That's the mantra.
Yeah, lots of resets.
I wish we could have had a longer conversation.
I know.
I think we have only this slot, so it's been an absolutely wonderful conversation. I think leading to a lot of introspection, especially as a coach, and of course, whatever profession we all are in. So thank you so very much, Vijay, for sharing your perspectives, deep perspectives. I know there are some wonderful questions as well about the area of creativity in coaching and a whole host of other things. As I said, I do apologize for not being able to really delve into some of these questions at this point. But I hope you all had a wonderful listen to the perspective that Vijay was sharing. Thank you all once again very, very much.
Thank you, Anant, and you have been an amazing dialogue partner. I really hope we can continue this conversation in a bigger space if there's interest from people here watching. Thank you so much, Anant, and thank you to Regal for inviting me.